what basically is happening with that, use you, Joe. So what basically happening with it is this. I need to, so we're in this position, and what you're always thinking about, I was finding this a little bit when I was with Sam, sometimes my feet were ending up a bit like light. You get this kind of sensation of lightness in your feet, you know, they're not quite connected to the ground. And the problem with that is when it happens, whether you get counted or not, you have no way of generating force. This is why we've got this foot up at like a right angle. It's not like, you see people do this. This isn't wrong, like all the time. There's sometimes you want to do this. Like if I needed to line my, let's say Joe for some reason was like driving his shoulder towards my foot, like this might not be a bad thing. But as a general rule, this is going to give me so much more force, right? In lots of directions, because I've just got the contact, I can drive. I can't generate a lot of force. Like this is like one direction. And it has a tendency, my foot has a tendency to slip as well when I'm kind of turning this in. So it's not completely wrong. There might be a time you need to do it, but as a general rule, I want to be like this. Yeah, and I want my toes engaged on the opposite foot. I don't want to be like that. Because here, that's the beginning of me actually, my whole body doing that. Which I may want, I may not want, but like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it deliberately. If I'm switching through, I'm switching through. I'm not in this kind of halfway where there's no drive. So this and this are like terrible. If he starts getting up, I've got nothing. So my ability to switch is going to be predicated on that connection to the ground. Yeah, my weight's in my right hip because my right hip is lowest. Certainly not here. So as he starts to come up, I'm switching. I need to get my feet kind of like, I need to work on that switch because I need to get my feet here. So what can start happening is, as I switch like this, halfway kind of through the movement, he ends up with this high and his shoulder connecting to my body, and then he kind of a bridge. And this will happen different ways, but that's essentially what's happening. If you get efficient movement at the beginning, you start loading your bridge. So if his movement is efficient, even if I make the right counter, I make the perfect counter, I load a bridge for him onto where his shoulder lines up with my sternum again, and just drives underneath. So it'll look something like this. He goes to get up, I switch, and there's his bridge. Because he's connected his shoulder to my sternum, which I never ever want. I never want his shoulder on my sternum, stand up, ground, whatever. I never want him with that ability to drive. So that's where this comes from. That's what's happening. He goes to come up, I'm switching, and when I switch, where I really want to switch is here. It's low on his arm. So now bridge me. So it's the difference between me, when I switch, I kind of want to switch down here. Because now there's no way he's gonna shift me. Look where his shoulder is. You know, so switch, and now we're into this game. Because of Kimura. You know, this arm gets isolated. Which is back to why we had our legs this way around in the first place. So he can move, but his arm gets exposed. That's just the nature of it. Yeah, he's going to struggle to switch. So yeah, he comes here. So I switch. When I switch, I'm switching low. Now bridge me. Yeah. The danger here is, and this is the game, the danger here is he takes my back. No. Well, I mean, you could do that, but I'll give it to you. You're going to need to switch like a show. So I'm coming up, and he switches. This is actually what was happening to you, Sam. He switches. Now look, if you get this armpit right down my no. So look, if he's here, I can't bridge. If he's here, I can bridge him. But the lower he starts to go, he needs to bring this knee to my hip because look. That was what was happening at the beginning, right? So this just becomes like just fundamental movements with back takes, with bridges. And the alternative to this is the guy's basically in a stack position, which is a whole different bit. But like, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing here. This is just to teach you the nature of the sprawl, basically, whether it's top or bottom. This is a sprawl versus sprawl situation. I'm basically sprawled even on the bottom. And so as he turns, depending on where he turns will depend on what happens. So if he turns high as I'm coming up, so we start right at the beginning. So I start to come up, I feel that this is on, I start to come up and he's switching. So if my shoulder is here, I'm going to bridge him. So as he's thinking about his switch, he really needs to switch low. Now my arm there's a danger that he can get my arm, so you'll go for the Kimura. And while he's going for the Kimura, I'm going to the back. So he then needs to think about how he can block the hip. The fundamental mistake there, if I'm getting the back, is he's not blocking the hip when he switches.
With the knee.
It's got to be the knee or the hand, but something's got to block that switch. So as he comes up, I'm switching, this knee goes here. And even in that moment here, I have no base here. Now that won't matter too much if I'm low on his arm, but the nearer that shoulder gets to my sternum, the bigger problem I've got. So if it was here, then he gets his shoulder here and he bridges, I'm done. It doesn't matter really what I'm doing with my feet. So that's what we're trying to prevent there, is that shoulder coming to the sternum on the switch. Yeah. Any questions on that at all? So from the bottom, you're looking for the bridge or the back take. The minute he starts turning to your legs, it's bridge or back take. If my shoulder is near his sternum, I'm going to bridge. If it's not, I'm going to try and take his back and try not to get my arm ripped off. Yeah. Any questions on that at all?
Just one on, if you get into your knees to a kind of turtle and try and stand up, are you, to avoid the guillotine, are you still using your arm to hide your neck?
That was what we talked about just now.
Yeah.
I still use it.
Yeah, okay.
You can still have, there are arming guillotines, but I don't think they're anywhere near as effective. But you've got to be mindful in these transitions. I mean, this is where most of the attacks come from. They don't come when the castle's all set up beautifully and everyone's in position. It's once battle starts and you start getting transitions, this is where things go down. There's an argument like Cameron says about mixed martial arts is where it's mixed because it's where transitions occur between the arts. That's where the real action happens. And it's kind of true. It's in the transitions between the positions which generally they kind of reflect, right? They have a rule set and the positions reflect it, and then come from that background and you get into something where there's certainly fewer rules, and then it becomes okay, the transitions are between the rules, what were the rule sets. Yeah. So let's go again. We'll just have a little play with that intro phase, so there's no time on it, 3 for 3. And you're just working on the top, on killing that initial setup, but then also being aware there's a bridge coming, there's a back take, and you can work on it together, talk it through, make sure you got it.
Just a quick one, Joe, when you take the back, how about seeing you moving? Are you just kind of taking out the hips and putting that?
I'm just pulling guard. Literally pulling guard. Because you're not blocking the hip, I'm just rotating all the way around you.
Right, okay.
Yeah.